In 1946, a young couple was parked in a lover's lane at around midnight when someone tapped on the driver's side window and shined a flashlight in. Naturally, the couple assumed it was just a cop. However, when they noticed what the assailant was wearing, they realized that something was horribly wrong. He appeared to be wearing some sort of white pillowcase over his head with nothing but 2 small eye holes cut out. The young man, Jimmy Hollis, cracked the window and told him,
"I think you have the wrong car."
And the assailant calmly responded with,
"I do not want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say."
The couple noticed that he was armed and figured that this was just a simple carjacking, so they decided it was best to obey him. However, as soon as they stepped out of the car, the assailant made a strange demand.
"You, take off your pants."
At this point, they realized that they had made the wrong choice, but lacking any other options, Jimmy obeyed his order once more. As soon as he removed his pants, the assailant struck Jimmy's head with his weapon. He hit him with such force that the girlfriend, Mary Larry, falsely thought he had been shot. The assailant then struck Mary next, before ordering her to stand in the middle of the road. He then uttered a single word:
"Run."
She sprinted down the road, desperately looking for anyone who could help her. Eventually, she found an old car and started frantically knocking on the windows. But when she peeked inside, there was nobody in it, and then out of nowhere, she was once again knocked down to the ground. She looked up and found the masked assailant standing over her, who would ask a confusing question.
"Why are you running?"
She responded that he told her to run, and he called her a liar before assaulting her. However, she soon quickly managed to get up and continue running down the street. After another half-mile, she finally found a house and got them to call the police. Ultimately, both Jimmy and Mary survived, although this was only the first attack of many. The assailant, deemed the Phantom Killer, seemed to target young couples late at night. Even though the police had numerous interesting suspects, he was never caught.
Police have arrested a Chucky doll for threatening members of the public with a knife. This month, police in Mexico arrested a doll. Terrifyingly, they had been made aware of a Chucky doll who, along with its owner, were threatening the public in Monclova. If you're not already aware, the doll comes from the 1988 film Child's Play. In the movie, the serial killer turns into the doll, which then begins a terrifying crime spree. The owner of the doll has only been identified as Carlos N. He was reportedly scaring the public with the doll, threatening them with a knife and demanding money off them. Both Carlos and the doll were charged with disturbing the peace and putting others' integrity at risk. The doll was handcuffed and taken to the police station. They both had mugshots taken, and there has been some controversy over whether or not the officers were taking their job seriously. The police officer who put cuffs onto the Chucky doll has been reprimanded. This teenager killed his sister over the Wi-Fi password. Kevon Watkins from Georgia was just 16 years old when he turned his family's lives upside down forever. On February the 2nd, 2018, an argument broke out in his home. There had been an issue with the Wi-Fi connection and Kevon was not happy. He wanted to play video games but was unable to because the connection kept dropping. In a bid to attempt to stop the other members of his family also using the internet, he decided to change the Wi-Fi password. He felt that this would be a good way to resolve the issues he was having. However, him and his mum got into a heated debate over the issue, which could have been easily resolved. Tragically, the argument would end in death. Kevon had an older sister, Alexis, and she decided to step in between the pair. However, this decision would prove fatal. Kevon and Alexis ended up in a physical fight and police were called. Kevon got his sister in a chokehold where he incapacitated her for 15 minutes until police arrived. Kevon only released the grip that he had over Alexis when a police officer commanded that he do so. She was tragically pronounced dead from asphyxiation. When she was killed, she actually had a young son and a fiancé. Kevon was sentenced to life in prison. Imagine getting married to a man and then 2 years later he chops you into 200 pieces. In 2021, Nicholas Metzen married Holly Bramley. The pair were from Lincoln in the UK. However, after they got married, the relationship completely broke down. Holly told her family she was really struggling. She said Nicholas was coercive and controlling. He would manipulate her, and Holly's family said he was an evil monster. Massive trigger warning here for animals. Nicholas was known to punish Holly in sickening ways, such as killing their pet puppy by putting it in a washing machine. He left the puppy there for her to find. She'd once even run to a police station with their pet rabbits to try and save them from him. Holly was last seen alive on CCTV on the 17th of March 2023. Shortly after, police were asked to do a welfare check for Holly, so they turned up at the couple's flat. What they found deeply concerned them. They could smell a strong scent of bleach, and they noticed bloodstains in the kitchen, bathroom and bedroom. When they asked Nicholas where his wife was, he joked that she might be hiding under the bed. He then told them that she'd gone off with a mental health support group. That was when something horrific was discovered. A member of the public spotted plastic bags floating in the river with them. When they were recovered from the water, they found that inside were human remains, including a human hand. They were identified as Holly's remains. Nicholas initially denied having anything to do with Holly's death, but then investigators made some damning discoveries. He'd taken money out of Holly's account and had also Google searched, "What benefits do I get if my wife has died, and can someone haunt me after they die?" He eventually pleaded guilty to her murder and admitted to having cut up her body and kept it in the flat for a week. He then contacted 28-year-old Joshua Hancock to dispose of the body. He paid him to do this. He tried to claim that he was being abused by Holly, and he showed investigators a bite mark on his arm. However, an expert examined the bite mark and stated that it appeared that that bite had occurred while Holly was actually in a headlock. Joshua also pleaded guilty for his part in this horrific crime. Frustratingly, it later transpired that Nicholas actually had numerous convictions against previous partners prior to marrying Holly. He'd been convicted for domestic assault as well as disclosing sexual images and breaching a restraining order. Holly's mum, Annette, spoke in court about how Nicholas had condemned the family to a life sentence of grief. A little boy woke up to find his parents and 3 brothers dead in their home. He was the only one left alive. In November 2022, an episode of Discover Oklahoma aired on TV. The show featured a couple, Jonathan and Lindsay Candy, talking about their experience of living in the area. The pair were described as customers of a local bakery and talked about how much they loved the food. Less than 2 years later, they would be found deceased inside their home alongside their 3 sons. It was the 22nd of April 2024. A 10-year-old boy placed a panicked 911 call explaining that all of his family was dead. The boy, who is being kept anonymous at the moment, was in his bedroom asleep at the time of the killings. He had his door closed and a fan on. Inside the home was his dad, Jonathan, and his mum, Lindsay, deceased. 3 children were also killed inside the home: Dylan, aged 18, Ethan, aged 14, and Lucas, aged 12. It's reported that investigators believe the parents got into an altercation. Jonathan is then believed to have shot his wife and his 3 sons before turning the weapon on himself. The child's uncle, named Brent, began a fundraiser online to help raise money for funeral costs and the costs of counselling for the boy. The child is believed to currently be staying with his family. The relatives of the child state, "Our entire family has been left shattered and confused, with so many questions we won't ever have answers to." This man disappeared from the middle of a music festival after sending some very strange texts. It was 2018. Kevin Graves was a 28-year-old from Michigan. He had 3 siblings and was an all-round really nice guy. He was in a relationship at the time and the pair were living together. As many young couples do, they decided to book a music festival together. Now, this was called the Electric Forest Music Festival in Rothbury. However, the festival has a bit of a reputation, as many festivals do, for having quite a lot of substances there and also some crime. Regardless, the couple headed there on the 27th of June that year. He remained in contact with his siblings and his parents throughout the festival. Nothing seemed to be amiss. That was until the morning of Sunday the 1st of July. Now, this was the final day of the festival. His dad received some weird text messages from him quite early in the morning. It was 7:55 a.m. and one of the messages said, "I love you so much for your service, Dad. Thank you for your service." His mum tried to text him later that morning to kind of check if everything was okay and asked him if he had a nice time. The reply back was simply the word "nothing." Shortly after this, communication stopped. Now, the day after this, on the 2nd of July, Kevin and his girlfriend were due to go home. However, she called his parents with some alarming news. They'd had an argument the day before and he'd vanished. Now, the argument was apparently due to Kevin being paranoid and accusing her of cheating on him. His phone and belongings remained at the campsite, but Kevin was nowhere to be found. Searches were fruitless and even dive teams got involved and found absolutely nothing in the local bodies of water. No one has ever seen him again. There's been no activity on his bank card since he vanished. A $10,000 reward is currently being offered for any information leading to the discovery of Kevin. Take a closer look at this photo. Although at first glance this looks like a lovely family photograph, if you look closer it's just about the most disturbing photo that you could see. It was New Year's Day 2011 in Caloocan in the Philippines. Local politician Reynaldo Dagsa was 35. He was a member of the Peacekeeping Action Team and therefore had inadvertently made enemies with people involved in organised crime. He was gathered together with his family outside of his house. He was just about to take a photo of them all together. That's when his assassin popped round the corner. Captured in the image is a man aiming a weapon at Reynaldo. He had unknowingly taken a photo of his killer assassinating him. Milliseconds later, Reynaldo was shot dead. Now the photo that he had taken, obviously understandably, was heartbreaking, but it was like gold dust to the investigators. They now had a clear photograph of the killer. They were able to identify the gunman as a convicted robber from the area who was out on parole. His name was Arnel Buenflor. It's believed that he took a disliking to Reynaldo due to the fact that he'd helped to get him arrested. Following the assassination, he was arrested once more. His accomplices were also arrested shortly after. This killer accidentally admitted to his crimes by accident when he forgot he was wearing a microphone while taking part in a documentary. This is how a true crime documentary exposed a killer. In 1971, Robert Durst met Kathleen McCormack and they got married. At the time of her disappearance in 1982, Kathleen had nearly graduated college. She was last seen by a witness at a dinner party where she appeared to be upset. She got a call from Robert and left. Robert admitted to having argued with Kathleen that night, but he said he put her on a train to New York and then never saw her again. Her friend called police to report her missing. Interestingly, Kathleen had been treated at a medical centre for facial bruises weeks prior to this and told the friend that Robert had done it. Robert had actually been dating someone else for some time prior to this and had been living separately to Kathleen. When her family broke into her cottage to try and find out where she was, they found the place had been trashed and her possessions put in the bin. Kathleen's family always believed that Robert was involved in her disappearance. In 2000, Susan Berman, a friend of Robert's, was found murdered. Now, she'd actually provided Robert with an alibi for Kathleen's disappearance. Now, pay really close attention to this next bit. Days after she was killed, a letter addressed to the Beverly Hills Police Department contained Susan's address and the word cadaver on it. On the envelope, Beverly was misspelled. Robert admitted in 2005 that Susan had called him shortly before her death to say that the police wanted to question her about Kathleen going missing. It's believed that Robert killed Susan to keep her quiet. In 2001, Robert's neighbour's body parts were found floating in Galveston Bay. Robert's elderly neighbour, Morris Black, had been killed and Robert was arrested. He was actually released on bail and fled and was found about a month later in Pennsylvania. He was found with $37,000 cash, 2 weapons, and interestingly, Morris Black's driving license. In court, Robert claimed he was acting in self-defense. He said he'd accidentally shot Morris and dismembered his body. Due to lack of forensics, he only got 5 years in jail. This is where things get really crazy. HBO was filming a documentary called The Jinx. During production, Susan's stepson found a letter written by Robert. This contained the same spelling error in the word Beverly as the anonymous letter to police. This implicated Robert in the murder. Now, while filming the documentary, Robert needed the toilet. He forgot that he had a microphone still attached to him. He was recorded talking to himself. He said, "There it is, you're caught. You're right, of course, but you can't imagine. Arrest him." And then he said, "What a disaster. He was right. I was wrong." And finally he said, "I'm having difficulty with the question. What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course."
The American boy that visited North Korea and returned in a coma. This is the devastating and terrifying case of Otto Warmbier. I'm not lying to you guys when I say this is one of the most terrifying things I've ever heard. Otto was really that guy in high school and college. He was so smart, like head of his class. He was an athlete and even prom king. He loved to travel and was a huge risk taker, which is actually what led him to want to go on a trip to North Korea. As many of you know, North Korea is a dangerous and forbidden country. It's a dictatorship that heavily censors and shelters their people. And North Korea hates America and Americans, but at this time would occasionally allow America tourism. But after what happened to Otto Warmbier, America made it illegal to travel to North Korea. Otto was traveling to North Korea with a tour group company called Youth Pioneer Tours. Their slogan was literally destinations your mother would rather you stay away from. The trip was meant to be 5 days long, and they were staying at this really nice hotel, and that hotel had a 5th floor that was forbidden for them to go on. On the last night of their trip, the group that Otto was traveling with decided to go out for drinks to celebrate the new year, and when they got back to the hotel, a group of them, including Otto, decided they were going to try and sneak up to the 5th floor. And allegedly, Otto stole something from the 5th floor. North Korea released security footage that allegedly shows Otto removing a propaganda poster from the wall. It's highly debated whether or not this security footage is Otto. Many people believe that he was set up by North Korea. The next day, on January 2nd, 2016, Otto and his tour group were getting ready to leave North Korea. They were at the airport going through security when 2 guards came up to Otto and started leading him away. I don't think anyone at that moment really understood how serious the situation was. One of the members from Otto's group actually jokingly said to him as he was being led away, "Well, that's the last we'll see from you." And for the next 6 weeks, no one knew if Otto was alive or dead until North Korea aired Otto's confession on TV. To me, his confession seems clearly coerced and forced, and honestly makes 0 sense. He's crying, begging for mercy, and pleading to go home and be with his family.
I committed my crime of taking out the important political slogan from the staff-only area of the ZakTopia International Hotel, aimed at harming the work ethic and the motivation of the Korean people. I understand the severity of my crime, and I have no idea what sort of penalty I may face. But I am begging to the Korean people and government for my forgiveness, and I am praying to the heavens so that I may be returned home to my family. I have been very impressed by the Korean government's humanitarian treatment of severe criminals like myself.
Korea, for your forgiveness. Please, I have made the worst mistake of my life.
The footage of Otto is honestly so sad and so hard to watch. He's only 21 years old, which is so young, and honestly the point where I feel like your life really starts. But they still sentenced the boy to 15 years of hard labor in North Korea. I can't even imagine how terrified Otto was in that moment. Otto's family did not give up though. They were fighting to have their son returned back to them, and after not seeing their baby for over a year and a half, North Korea agreed to release Otto back to America. At this point, we had no idea what Otto's condition was going to be like, but his parents were extremely hopeful. They waited anxiously as Otto's plane hit American soil, but quickly all hope was lost. Otto had to be carried out of the plane. He was in a coma with severe brain damage and tragically passed away less than 1 week later. To this day, we still don't have answers about what really happened to Otto in North Korea. Like I mentioned earlier, shortly after this, the United States did ban travel to North Korea, but I still felt like it was important to bring some more awareness to Otto's story.